Well, I am very, very happy to be here today, a strong proponent of education for women. I go back a long way with both of these schools. I enrolled at Smith College in 1861. No, not quite that long ago, 1961. I don't think Kristof was around yet. In fact, I'm sure she wasn't. But certainly I was very happy to be there, and have known Kristof for many years. And I'm only sorry that you can't see her lovely, warm, smiling face. And if I could give her a kiss, I would. So now I must tell you also that my background with Barnard College goes back even further. And that is because my great-great-great-grandfather, Gershom Mendez Seixas, there's a Seixas Award at Columbia nowadays, was the grandfather of the founder of Barnard College, whose name was Annie Nathan Meyer, which I know that Nikki will be able to tell you about. But you young women who are here today probably aren't so interested in my ancient history. And you're probably saying to yourselves, why would I want a women's college? Well, we're not there yet. We still have a long way to go. And if you're not sure about that and you haven't paid attention to events in the last few weeks, I was very astounded this morning while drinking my coffee to read an Ipsos survey done by the Canadian Girl Guides, that's the same as the Girl Scouts in the US, that identifies that sexism is still alive and well even amongst young people. And it is stating that as early as 11 years old, young women are experiencing gender inequality. I also checked another statistic, and that was, yes, women are now 50% of most medical school enrollees. But when you look at the higher levels, that is the department heads, it is still less than 1/3 of department heads at hospitals that are women. So we're not there yet. And I've written a wonderful, I hope, article about women's colleges for College Tracker, and I'm very happy to be writing things for them. And I hope you will read that. And I'm extremely proud and excited to introduce Kristof, whom I wish I could see, from Smith College, and Nikki Chambers from Barnard College. So shall we start with Karen?
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm a student here at Smith College, and one of the things I first loved about Smith was its amazing campus. I volunteer here to give tours on campus, but if you can't make it, let me show you around. Smith is unique because we have houses, not dorms. There are 35 houses on campus in all different styles and sizes, each with its own unique charm. There's a strong house community where you can always find lots of support. Dining at Smith is also unique. There are 15 dining rooms across campus with diverse menus, including vegetarian, vegan, gluten-free, and kosher. Plus, Smith uses locally sourced foods whenever possible. Smith's Campus Center is one of the busiest places on campus. There are lots of places to get together with friends, study groups, or student clubs. Plus, there's a great cafe. And our radio station, Rosie Q, is here. Athletics are big at Smith, and we have some great facilities for both serious and not so serious athletes. There's an excellent gym and even free fitness classes during the school year. From humanities to STEM majors, Smith gives students whatever they need to succeed. There are cutting-edge science and engineering facilities, a writing center, and the world's largest women's history archive. The arts have always been a big part of Smith. The Smith College Museum of Art is known as one of the most impressive college art museums in the country. Sage Hall is home to the Smith College Department of Music. The Mendenhall Center for the Performing Arts includes several theaters for both dance and theater productions. One of the things that Smithies take great pride in is our beautiful campus. It makes even walking to class fun. Smith students have studied botany since 1875, and the campus has been a living lab for students and faculty. The Botanic Garden was established by the college's first president, so the whole campus would be of both scientific and aesthetic value. Paradise Pond is one of Smith's most treasured spots. The boathouse on the bank of the pond serves as both a classroom and an outdoor center, where students can check out canoes, kayaks, and rowboats. Often, you'll see students just relaxing and enjoying this gorgeous setting. I hope you've enjoyed our little tour, but to really experience Smith's campus, you have to visit. I hope to see you around.
Barnard College is not just in the city of New York, it is of the city. Our students have every chance to use the city as their extended classroom. With a strong sense of community and the faculty to support them, they venture forth to explore unparalleled possibilities for learning.
We don't teach our students. We learn with them, we learn through them. And there's something incredibly special about being at a women's college in the middle of the major metropolis on the planet, which is New York City.
Barnard absolutely exceeded my expectations. Honestly, just the first month of being here, I felt like I was a different person for the better, stronger. I had never had such a strong community of women before. One of the best decisions I've ever made.
What could one say about the Barnard distinctiveness? Inquiring, I think, a capacity to question, to challenge, a willingness to go back after class and read up on something to come back the next class. It's an ideal place for a faculty person.
I think science at Barnard is amazing. You get so much support that you would not imagine anywhere else.
We need our students to be able to grow and learn and understand technology, embrace it, and use it in a disciplinary and in an interdisciplinary context, and in their work and in their life.
Barnard means a lot to me. Being here 30 years, I've got so many friendships and relationships with staff members and employees. One of the reasons why I come to work every day is because of the Barnard students. Most of these students have jobs, they go to school, and they also have activities on college campus. These girls are amazing.
For someone interested in dance and the performing arts, there's no place better than to teach at Barnard. Barnard has an amazing history with the art form dating back to its very beginnings, and our students get to benefit not only from what Barnard has to offer, but from what dance in New York City has to offer.
It's got everything that I wanted in a college. The small faculty, the small student body, but then the resources of a giant university.
At Barnard, I'm surrounded by women, and that makes me feel empowered. And I found that people are so nice here, and they really just want to see you succeed.
If it wasn't for financial aid, 50% of the students would not be able to attend Barnard. And I think that is probably the most important thing.
When you have people who have different experiences and they feel comfortable and included in speaking, you're challenged. And frankly, those challenges make us all better thinkers.
As someone who graduated from Barnard, I know what was given to me. They encouraged me to think outside of the box.
The Barnard women are unique because they know so much when they get here. We're really getting the cream of the crop.
The Barnard woman, I would describe with one word: limitless. Meaning she doesn't recognize boundaries. She doesn't recognize the boundaries of gender. She doesn't recognize the boundaries of power. She doesn't recognize the boundaries of being restricted to simply being a woman.
I want to start by thinking about women's colleges as themselves excellent higher education institutions that offer exceptional resources and deeply engaged professors to give students the best possible education for preparation in many, many different kinds of fields. Our goal, what's been in our DNA since women's colleges were founded, is the notion that we want to empower women for success. At Smith, at Barnard, at other women's colleges, there is limitless potential. Students can achieve everything they want to, and perhaps things they didn't know they wanted to achieve. All of the resources, all of the opportunities, all of the facilities are geared for the success of women. And we think this is a really powerful way to be educated. It teaches you that there's nothing you can't accomplish. It teaches you to have a strong, confident voice. It teaches you to be self-confident about your skills and ability, and to enter a world where often women's voices are the softest in a room, in a conference room, in a CEO suite, in an organization. And we teach you how to take your voice and your opinions and to really use them to make them matter. For us, we're training women to go out and be leaders. And there's a lot of evidence in terms of the kinds of success that women's college graduates have seen, that they are in the C-suites in business, they are in organizations, they are in leadership roles in government. They are out doing amazing things, and credit the education that they received on our campuses as really launching them into these worlds. We think that leadership is something that you can train someone to do, certainly, but I think what we love at women's colleges is that every day students are practicing leadership. They are leaders. They are thought leaders in the classroom. They are inspiring their peers to be involved in important causes and ideas. They are using their strong voice and their good opinions to have a significant impact in the world. We often see this in STEM fields, where in fact women are the least represented when you look at careers in graduate schools. And we see women's college graduates going on and having a huge impact in this space. They are not restricted by gender. They are in fact encouraged and challenged to go out and have an impact in these critically important fields. I think about a field like engineering, where women cannot have a marginal role. It is too important, too significant. When we look at issues around environment and climate change, women need to be at that table, women need to be part of that discussion. And so at women's colleges, we are telling women, this is what is going to happen to you. This is your future. That notion of limitlessness. I think the other piece that we do so well at women's colleges is that when you graduate from a women's college, you go off and join a network of incredible alums around the world that are doing really amazing things. And you join this network that will help you and lift you for your entire life. Wherever I travel in the world for Smith, often with my Smith College bag, I always encounter a Smithy or somebody who knows someone who went to Smith. And if it's not someone who went to Smith, it's someone who went to Barnard or Wellesley or Mount Holyoke. And there is really this sense that these are the women that are having the biggest impact. These are the women who are leading, who are using their good minds and their good education to really go out and make a difference in many, many different ways. So I'd also encourage all of you who are listening to this, if you have not explored a website called Women's College Coalition. It's a group of us in the U.S. And some in Canada that really talk a lot about women's colleges and about the kinds of educations that we offer and our success. Looking at where have women's college graduates gone? What percentage go on to study in the sciences and in other fields? Who are the women who are having this impact in the world? So womenscolleges.org. So we can even post that URL. That's a really wonderful place to go and hear about this particular impact. So I'm going to stop there. I know there'll be some time for questions, so I'll welcome any questions about women's colleges and why they continue to be incredible, empowering places for women. But my other task today is, if you get excited about what Nikki and I tell you about women's colleges, we hope you'll apply. And I want to give you some ideas about how we will evaluate your application. And so I want to talk a little bit about preparing for the students, or for those who are advising students, talk about how to prepare for a rigorous college admission process. When we talk about it as a highly competitive institution, a place where we're making distinctions among the students who are applying, and trying to choose students who we think will be most successful in our classrooms, in our residence halls, in our communities. And so one of the things that I think is really important to start with is that academic performance is critical to the admission application. So when we are looking at a student's application, we're deeply curious about the ways in which she has prepared herself in her high school classroom. If she has access to IB, honors classes, whatever it might be, or she's doing in the Canadian curriculum that for her province, that what we want is, we want a student to have challenged herself and to have demonstrated by the marks she's received that she's done well. It's not a formula. You can't ask us what, you know, if you had a particular average, if you have an 89 average, you're going to get into Smith or to Barnard. But what we're trying to get a sense for is how successful has the student been and how much has she challenged herself in terms of what's available in her high school and how well she's succeeded in those particular subjects. We're really looking at a student's writing. There are often multiple writing samples that are required in an application. And our hope is that we have a student who can express herself well and can use the writing samples in the application to help us get to know her better. What we're doing is looking at who this student will be in our classroom and our community. And so these kinds of academic indicators are critically important to us. Some of us also require standardized testing, the dreaded SAT, for instance, or ACT. And this is in an attempt to try to make sure we understand every student within the context of her school, her city, and her country. We enjoy applicant pools from all over the world, and so the SAT or the ACT is one consistent piece of data that we have about every student. But our process is very holistic. We're also interested in what a teacher says about students. We're interested in you in an interview. We're interested in what your university advisor says about you or your school counselor says about you. Our goal in a highly competitive admission process is to try to get to know you in as many ways as we can and have some sense of your academic progress to date and a sense of your intellectual potential in college. And so when you're thinking as students are preparing for this process, working really hard in your classes, working really hard at your writing, being committed to activities that you're doing outside of the classroom, really preparing yourself for the kind of rigorous environment that you'll see at a college. I think that's a hugely important part of the application process. So now I'm very close now to the 10-minute mark. So I think I'm going to stop right here. And I'm happy, of course, to answer any other questions about the application process. And I'm also happy if my friends in Toronto have suggestions about other things that they would like me to cover, I'd be open to that as well.
So we have some questions. So the first one is, how many undergraduate students do you accept?
So I will answer for Smith, and I will let Nikki answer for Barnard. Last year, we admitted 31% of the students who applied to Smith College.
Okay, excellent. And next question is, what's the average class size?
So at Smith, the average class size is 19 students.
Okay, perfect. Now, Nikki, do you have anything to add on to these questions as well? Because I'm sure they're wondering about how many undergraduate students your school accepts and your average class size.
Absolutely. So Barnard accepts about 13.9% of its applicants, and we have an average class size of 15. And I would also say that 70% of the classes that are on Barnard's campus are 19 students and under.
Okay, excellent. And this is for Karen. Can you explain something about the glories of Northampton, accessible to
So location is such an important thing to assess when you're looking at a college campus. And I think that you're going to hear about two amazingly different and amazing locations. So Nikki can describe the dynamic and vibrant New York City where Barnard is located, and also the lovely neighborhood in which they're located. And for Smith, we are located in a really, really lively, fun, exciting, but small city. And some might even call it a town, frankly. But it's a really wonderful, easy to access, it's walkable, it's friendly, town of 30,000 people. Somebody recently, though, decided to really kind of highlight what it is that we do in a town so small that's kind of magnificent, that are something like a city. So someone calculated 59 restaurants that we have in Northampton, and then isolated one of the favorite foods that college students like and calculated that we had 212 flavors of ice cream just in our small town. So, which is to say that this is a very vibrant place, lots of shops and restaurants. It's very easy to walk to, it's very safe, it's a very friendly town. We have a great relationship with Northampton. So a really lovely place to be a college student. And we also have a partnership with 4 other neighboring colleges, so that we have a free bus system that gets you all around this particular area, access to not only what's happening in Northampton, but to what's happening on 4 other really amazing college campuses.
Okay, excellent. And generally, is there a type of style that you would say your classes take in general? So is it focused on learning or lectures or collaborative learning or something more unique?
Nikki, do you want to answer this one first, and then I'd be happy to as well? Give you a turn to go first.
Yeah. Yeah, so Barnard's classes that are on our campus are primarily seminar or discussion based, just based on the class size. But if students are taking advantage of the opportunities that exist at Columbia University, the classes might be a bit larger. But I am going to go into that relationship a little bit later. So I guess the answer is that it varies. Primarily on our campus, though, you are going to be engaged in seminar-style discussions where the professor is really there as a guiding force in the classroom, but really the meat of those intellectual conversations are a result of student input.
Yeah, and at Smith, you're going to see a combination of lecture classes as well as discussion classes. I think that even within the lecture classes, there is plenty of opportunity for students to engage with professors, and that the style is very much collaborative. That every student's voice is encouraged and opinions are encouraged. And you are asked to speak up and to speak up often and to share your opinion.
Okay, and so we'll take a few last questions. And so, what is the average professor to student ratio? And let's go to Karen first for this.
Sure. Our student-faculty ratio at Smith is 9 to 1.
Okay. And
ours
what
is
about
10
in
to
terms
1.
of, okay, so very similar. And how do you, this is going to be the last question. How does your respective school approach the writing portion of standardized testing?
So at Smith, the writing portion of both the ACT and the SAT are optional. So a student can either sit for the writing portion or not. So we feel like we have enough writing in our application to be able to assess you. So you are welcome to submit SAT or ACT results without the writing component.
Excellent. So thank you all for these questions. If you have any additional questions, continue to write them into the chat and we'll address them in the second QA portion. And so let's just transition to the next section. So Suji, would you like to introduce our next speaker?
No, he wants me to.
Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to transition the video straight to Nikki. And Nikki can go ahead and start her speech.
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Nikki Chambers. I'm an admissions counselor at Barnard. And Karen, thank you so much for this amazingly comprehensive introduction to the transformative experiences that exist on women's colleges. I think a lot of students tend to assume that women's colleges experiences are just going to be kind of replications of each other. So the Barnard experience will be the same as the Smith experience, which will be the same as the Mount Holyoke experience, etc. And I think Barnard's existence is a nice reminder that women's colleges are not monolithic groups, and that there are various forms of women's colleges that exist. And I say that because Barnard has a very unique relationship to a co-ed institution. But just to kind of get you oriented with Barnard itself, Barnard is about 2,400 undergraduates only. So on Barnard's campus, there are no graduate students in your class. All of the research opportunities that are on our campus are only for Barnard students. As I mentioned earlier, we have a student-faculty ratio of 10-to-1 and an average class size of 15. Barnard is very much foundationally a small liberal arts college. That being said, because of our relationship to Columbia University, our students really are afforded the best of both worlds. In order, I think, for students to really fully understand our relationship, I'm going to take a step back and discuss the history of our relationship. So Barnard was founded in 1889 by Annie Nathan Meyer and Frederick A.P. Barnard. Frederick A.P. Barnard was actually the 10th president of Columbia University. And when the college was founded in 1889, Frederick A.P. Barnard's initial idea was to make Columbia University a co-ed college. But it was 1889, and so we all know the answer was no. And in fact, Barnard did not go co-ed until Columbia did not go co-ed until 1983. And when that happened, there were a lot of questions as to what was going to happen to Barnard. Was Barnard going to be absorbed into the Columbia University system altogether? Was it going to be absolved? What was going to happen to this institution? Because Barnard for the past 100 years had created a legacy of educating incredibly intellectually curious, bright, and smart women, and bold women who take risks, who are trailblazers in their professions, we really didn't want to let this community go because it was so transformative for our students. So today, Barnard exists as one of the 4 undergraduate colleges under the larger Columbia University umbrella. I think it's important to remember that Columbia University isn't just Columbia College, but rather Columbia University is also undergraduate and graduate. Those 4 undergraduate colleges that exist under that larger umbrella include Barnard College, which is a women's college, Columbia College, which is a co-ed institution, the School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, which is for students who are more STEM focused and are focused on engineering, and also General Studies, which is for students of a non-traditional college age. All 4 of those institutions are distinct and separate. For example, Barnard has a separate admissions process from Columbia University. We have a separate financial aid process. We have separate educational philosophies and curriculum requirements. And in fact, I think that's one of the most inherent differences between Barnard and Columbia. Columbia students all have core curriculum requirements. So there are a specific set of courses every Columbia student will have to take in order to graduate. Whereas Barnard is proudly a liberal arts institution. Our curriculum is very much associated with the liberal arts. And so our students will be following general distribution requirements, but they definitely get to have flexibility and able to kind of craft their own educational experience. So there won't have a specific list of classes that every student will have to take. We also have a separate administration. So we have a separate president and a separate provost. So we are distinct and on our own, but because of our affiliation with Columbia University, our students really are afforded the best of both worlds. They get the opportunity of having this liberal arts experience where they get to know their professors by their first name, where they're able to have relationships with their professors, but they also are afforded immediate access to large university resources. And this partnership is very seamless, and it really does feel like you are a part of a lot of smaller communities that also make up one giant community. Our students are taking advantage of this partnership in a myriad of ways, through academic opportunities, through extracurricular opportunities, and through athletics as well. Starting with the academic experience, between Barnard and Columbia University, students are afforded over 3,000 course offerings. A student can take a class at Columbia over Barnard for a scheduling convenience. So maybe British literature didn't fit into their schedule at Barnard, but it does at Columbia, so they'll just go take that class at Columbia. Maybe there's a professor on Columbia's campus who you've heard amazing things about and you want to take a class with that professor. You can just enroll and take that class. Maybe you want to experience a large lecture hall experience. Maybe you've been in small classes your whole life. You've never experienced that classroom dynamic. So maybe you want to be an absorber of knowledge and take a class in a larger lecture hall. I do think there is a misconception, and students assume only Barnard students are taking classes across the street at Columbia, and Columbia students are not taking classes at Barnard, and that's absolutely not true. Barnard and Columbia students are crossing the street at equal rates and are taking classes on each other's campuses. For a Columbia student, they may take a class at Barnard because macroeconomics didn't fit into their schedule at Columbia, but it does at Barnard. Maybe there's a professor on our campus they want to take a class with whom they've heard amazing things about and think that they can really learn under that particular individual. I should also mention that professors that are tenured at Barnard are also tenured at Columbia. So regardless of what side of the street you're on, the caliber of education will be the same. And also, I've heard anecdotally from Columbia students and Columbia graduates who cite some of their most transformative classroom experiences existing on Barnard's campus, not Columbia's campus, not just because the classes are smaller, but because the classes in our classes tend to be very intellectually rich. So the limit of courses that you're allowed to take at Barnard and Columbia, there really is no cap. There really is flexibility. Students don't get priority registering for classes, so everyone is registering for classes at the same time, regardless of whether or not you are a Barnard or Columbia student. In addition, depending upon your course load, your major, what you're interested in taking, the amount of classes you take at Columbia will vary. Some students over the course of 4 years will take fewer than 20% of their classes at Columbia over 4 years because they really love their Barnard classes and they don't feel they need to go across the street that often. There are other students who may do a more even 50-50 split, and they may take some classes, they may take 50% of their classes at Barnard and 50% of their classes at Columbia. And then if you are someone whose major is at Columbia and not Barnard, you may take closer to 70% of your courses at Columbia. I think what this partnership really affords is our students the opportunity to have a liberal arts education that is for women, but also having immediate access to large university resources. If you're thinking about whether or not Barnard or Columbia is the better fit for you, I definitely would consider how you think a women's college would impact your educational experience. Think about all of those things that Karen spoke about, because so much of that is embedded in the experience at Barnard. Also considering the liberal arts experience, that at Barnard there is space for women to contribute intellectually. Every leader on Barnard's campus is a woman. And that leadership also translates over to Columbia as well. Between the two institutions, you have access to over 700 clubs and organizations. And Barnard students don't just join those clubs and then fade into the background. They are active participants in those clubs and organizations and often hold leadership positions in them as well. And Barnard is a D1 Ivy League team through Columbia University. And so that means we offer D1 athletics. We're the only women's college in the US to do so.
Wow.
Down the questions that have been entered into the chat. So the first question, this was a question posed a little bit ago. It was just to talk about the process to apply as a student athlete. So Nikki from Barnard, would you be able to answer that? And then Karen, if you could touch upon anything that is critical as well.
So like I mentioned earlier, Barnard is D1 Ivy League through the Columbia women's team. If you're interested in being recruited to Barnard as an athlete, you should be in touch with the coaches at Columbia and our athletics liaison. And she also is a go-between between our office and the Columbia Athletics Department.
Okay, excellent. Would you be able to type that contact into the chat?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. And Karen, do you have anything to add on to that in terms of the process of applying as a student athlete?
Sure. I think it would be interesting to talk about what we do at Smith as an example of what happens at the Division III level in the U.S. So there's 3 divisions within U.S. intercollegiate athletics: Division I, Division II, and Division III. So Nikki has beautifully described Division I, which is the most competitive. And then at the Division III level, it tends to be small liberal arts colleges like Smith, where the idea is that a student is coming to play the sport and to be actively engaged and competitive, but that she is also balancing that with a very rigorous academic schedule. So she is in some ways student first and athlete second, but they're probably also for some students equally important. And so the Division III process does not require that a student be quite as proactive from the point of view of they can be directly in touch with the coach or within the admission office, and we can connect them to the coach. And there's not as many layers in terms of the process, so the coach will be in contact with the student directly, maybe with the student's coach from high school or from a club team. And then the athletic department would let us know, the coaches would let us know if the student were somebody who could contribute meaningfully to that particular sport and team. And then that would be a plus, that would be an advantage for the student in the application process. They still would have to be admitted as a student who is very strong academically and would meet some of those criteria that I discussed later, but it also allows for a coach to be able to let us know that this student would be particularly attracted to that team. So that's just a little bit of context about Division III and about the 3 divisions within the U.S. intercollegiate athletic system, just in case that might be new to anyone who's listening to this.
Okay, excellent, thank you. And now, since we're still on the topic of student athletic recruitment, a question has popped up. So how are student athletes supported between high-level athletics and academics? Nikki, please take the mic on this one.
Yeah, I think that college athletics and college work require an adjustment. Quite candidly, I think that the demands are going to be high, but I think what you have at Barnard is a supportive community of students and faculty that are flexible, who will work with you, who are happy to accommodate you and your busy schedule. So as long as you are open and communicative with the people you need to be, it's very easy to work out and easy to balance.
Okay, excellent. And Karen, do you have anything to add for that one?
No, I would also say that I think that one of the things that we've noticed among our athletes is that they are amazing time organizers. They manage their time beautifully. In fact, they do some of their best academic work when they're in season because there is not a moment to waste. And so they do not procrastinate. They are very organized, manage their time beautifully. So some of our best students on campus are actually also athletes because they have figured out how to. That's one of the big keys to success in college. Isn't always how smart you are. It's how well you manage all of the expectations and how well you balance priorities and how well you take care of yourself. And so I think athletes do that in such an amazing way.
Yeah, there's a level of self-advocacy that I think student athletes tend to have because they may ask for extensions or ask for help in different ways. And they know that in order to kind of get what they need done, they have to kind of articulate when they need help. So they tend to be really great self-advocates.
Excellent. And now onto the topic of financial aid. That's something that oftentimes is a critical question from families. So in terms of the schools, are there any services or specific programs that help with financial aid to Canadian students? Let's go to Nikki for this.
So for all of our international students, so that is anyone who is not a U.S. citizen or a permanent resident of the United States, we practice need-aware admissions policies. So we are going to evaluate how much a family or student will need when we're considering a decision to admit them. But regardless of their citizenship status, if we admit a student to Barnard, we will give them 100% of demonstrated need. Barnard only offers need-based aid only. We do not offer athletic, merit, or talent-based scholarships, but we do meet 100% of demonstrated need. So we take the total cost of attending Barnard, which is tuition, books, room and board, flying back and forth to see your families, miscellaneous items that come with living in the city, that total cost of attendance. That number is then subtracted by your expected family contribution. And then whatever is left in the middle, Barnard will meet you 100% of the way in the form of small loans, grant, and work study money.
Excellent. And what about in terms of any financial aid services available at Smith?
Yes, so very similar situation in that we meet 100% of demonstrated financial need, and that need does play into the application process, especially for international students, which would also include Canadians at Smith. But I also want to take a step back and just make sure that the audience is aware that the financial aid process in the U.S. requires that students apply for admission and financial aid simultaneously, and that it's very important that you look at each institution, each college that you're applying to, their website, so that you're aware of requirements and deadlines, and that you keep a very close eye for getting your documents in on time, because often the ability to access financial aid could be impacted by a late application. So really important that you look at the websites of the colleges that you're applying to, and that you make sure you understand the particular requirements, and that you are also aware that what a college costs may not be what you might actually pay. So that when you're putting together a list of colleges, you might look at some schools that say, wow, without need-based financial aid, I wouldn't be able to afford to go to Smith. But do know that with financial assistance, it might be quite affordable. So it's always our recommendation that students and families are looking at a wide range of colleges, but that the sticker price, the actual price, might be very different after financial aid. We all have financial aid calculators on our website. They don't often work very well for international students, to be perfectly frank with you, but you could at least take a look at our websites and take a look at some of the information that we have. The U.S. government mandates that we have very transparent information about the financial aid process and financial aid eligibility. So it's always on our websites, and we would encourage students, and this is true for Smith and Barnard, but for lots of other U.S. colleges and universities, to really take a close look at those things when you're applying.
Okay, lovely, thank you. And this was a question that was asked a bit ago as well. So for your schools, do you have any niche programs that you consider is unique and highlights some of the very best at your schools? So let's switch over to Barnard for this.
Okay. I think we do have a couple of really niche and unique programs, one of which being our internship opportunities that we have on campus. Barnard has about 3,000 internships for 2,400 students. And because of our close proximity to the city, because we are in New York City, our students aren't limited as to when they can pursue internship opportunities. They're not limited to winter break or summer break. They're able to pursue all of these opportunities throughout the academic year. Fridays tend to be a popular internship day because many students don't have classes on Fridays. But what's really cool about this experience is, again, like I've been saying, Barnard is a liberal arts institution. And at liberal arts colleges, what we believe is what you major in isn't necessarily a direct pipeline into what you will become. We want our students to learn how to think critically. We want our students to learn how to write incisively. We want our students to learn how to think on their feet, learn how to articulate their thoughts and make connections. And this internship program that we have really allows for students to make connections between what they're learning inside of the classroom and this amazing professional experience they're getting out in the real world. There are hundreds of industries that call New York City home, and our students really don't feel limited to any of them. We have students who intern at the New York Times, at The Economist, at the Wall Street Journal, at Teen Vogue, at 17 Magazine, at the Museum of Natural History, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, at Planned Parenthood. bunch of internship opportunities, and over 75% of our students will pursue an internship before they graduate. So it really does make a connection, not just with your experience while you're at Barnard, but can also lead to opportunities once you graduate.
Great. And Karen, what about in terms of the niche programs or any type of services and programs you want to highlight that are unique?
Sure, thank you. So at Smith, we have a 4-year Bachelor of Science degree in engineering science. So there are actually very few small colleges in the US that have an engineering program, and there are only 2 of us who are women's colleges who have engineering, and ours is the larger and more established program of the 2. So we're really proud of our engineers and the amazing things they've gone on to do. And I always tell prospective students that when we started engineering at Smith a number of years ago, I stopped thinking about an engineer always being a man, that engineers are women and they do amazing things. And so our engineers are out there doing great things, and we have a wonderful facility on campus, partially funded by the Ford Motor Company for engineering, so it's an amazing program. I alluded to earlier our 5-college consortium, which is this partnership that we have with 4 other local schools. There's a free bus system that runs among the 5 campuses. Students can take classes, participate in activities, join social events, be in this really wonderful area that's about a 19-kilometer radius of 5 amazing institutions, access to 5,000 undergraduate classes, lots of clubs, activities, music, dance, theater, anything you can think of. If you are bored, if you attend one of our schools, it's because you're not even trying even a little. There are so many things going on among the 5 campuses, and the free bus system makes it very easy to get from one to the other. So those are 2 things that I wanted to highlight.
Super. And now in terms of residency, is residence available for all 4 years for Canadian students, or is it only guaranteed for the first year? And let's switch over to Barnard for this.
Yep, all of our students who enter as first years, housing is guaranteed all 4 years, which is amazing in a place like New York.
Oh, very jealous. And what about in terms of Smith?
Yes, absolutely. Housing is guaranteed for 4 years.
Excellent. Now, in terms of a question specifically for Barnard, are most of your majors available for both at both Barnard and Columbia College?
Yes, and so for students who are, there are a few majors that are housed at one institution and not the other. So if you are a dance, theater, architecture, or urban studies major, those are departments that are housed at Barnard, not at Columbia. So even if you are a Columbia student, if you are interested in those disciplines, you have to take the requirements for the major on our campus because we house the department and Columbia does not. If you are interested in departments like computer science or statistics, those are departments that are housed at Columbia and not Barnard. And so those students have to take the requirements for those majors on Columbia's campus. But if you are majoring in the rest of the majors like English and history and political science and economics and astronomy and biology and chemistry, the list goes on. Those are departments that you're going to find that are housed on both sides of the street. So when you are thinking about the Columbia and Barnard partnership, you get to exercise the utmost flexibility because you're literally just choosing classes based on your interest or based on what's offered at one place versus the other. So you really do get to take advantage of this partnership as much or as little as you want to.
Excellent. And is there a directory available online so that students and families can see where they take what?
So that's the really interesting part, is that all of the classes are all listed on one listserv. So even our current students often don't even know where their classes are until they find out what building they're in.
Okay, okay. And so in terms of international student support, are there any kinds of services or programs that your school career center takes to offer to international students specifically? And could you also elaborate on any transitional orientational programming? So since we have the screen on Barnard, you can go ahead.
Okay. So we have a new student orientation program that's called, we call it NSOP, and it's for all of our new students that come to campus. But before NSOP, all of our international students are invited to campus about a few days prior, so that they can get oriented with our new community. They can meet the Dean of International Studies, who's there as a resource for them throughout all 4 years. There's an Office of International Student Affairs, so they're also there as a resource for our students as well. And in terms of career services, we have a new initiative called Beyond Barnard, and they really are a one-stop shop for all students, whether they're domestic or international, to frequent and really develop a plan as to what kinds of opportunities they want to explore that exist beyond our 4 acres of campus.
Excellent. I'm just going to drop the link here for Beyond Barnard. If anyone wants to look at that, so it's right here. Yeah, and what about in terms of international programming? And I'm going to switch over to Karen.
Sure, yeah. So like Barnard at Smith, we do have both orientation for new students and then before that, an orientation just for our international students. So it's 4 days before the rest of the students arrive just to get settled and to do some paperwork and to be introduced to a number of resources and opportunities on campus. In terms of career development, I think that one of the most powerful things we can offer our international students are connections to our international alums and really helping them shape where they want to be, where they want to have a job, a career, graduate school. So we have a wonderful, it's called the Lazarus Center for Career Development. And that is a place where students can work with a professional career counselor on resumes and cover letters, but also access this amazing electronic network of Smithies around the world who can help them with careers. And so often that's where our international students are really using those connections, you know, to understand what this particular field might be like outside of the U.S. and to get advice about the process. So I think that's been a really powerful way for our international students to make those kinds of connections.
Excellent. And in terms of research, are first years allowed to participate in research at your faculty? Or do they have to wait until their sophomore year or their junior year? Let's stick with Karen for this one.
Sure. So we have multiple research opportunities for students on campus. And yes, they can be accessed by students as early as the first year. I think that what we find with our first year students is often they're not exactly sure how to navigate research. And so what we encourage them to do is to talk to their professors, find out what their professors are doing and see if they can join a project that's already in progress. There's a wonderful mentoring system that we have for students. I'll give you an example of a student from Vancouver who is in her final year at Smith, and she's working in a neuroscience lab looking at the effects of anesthesia on a molecular level and trying to figure out whether anesthesia chemicals could be developed in a different way that would avoid side effects but still paralyze you during surgery. So this is her 3rd year in the lab, and she's working on a research project, thesis with the professor. But when she started in the lab at the end of her 1st year, she was really just learning and learning from the older students. Then her 2nd and 3rd year, she got deeper into it. Now in her 4th year, she is not only working on her big research paper, but she is mentoring the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd year students in the lab.
And what about research opportunities for first years at Barnard?
So most students, if they're going to pursue research, kind of similar to Karen, they may tag along and tag on and do and participate in a research opportunity that's being run by their professor. But we find that most students don't really pursue research their first year just because we want them to get academically acclimated to the community before they jump in and pursue their own research project.
Excellent. And Nikki, do you see any recent trends in the interest of going to a U.S. college by international students?
Yes. Yeah, I think that Barnard is becoming increasingly more popular overall. And I think that around the world, people are understanding the unique experience that Barnard can offer its students. And a lot of those unique experiences, I think, are a direct result of our identity as a women's college.
And what about you, Karen? At Smith, do you see any recent trends in the interest of going to a U.S. college by international applicants?
Yeah, I think we have seen renewed interest. I think there is something about both, as Nikki says, the women's college experience, but also the way in which liberal arts colleges and a liberal arts education is sort of a quintessentially American experience that really is not something that you can get anywhere else. And we're certainly quite encouraged that despite some of the craziness that is going on in the U.S., some of our politics and some of the issues that are swirling around, that students still see the value in coming to liberal arts and getting an education that they really could not replicate elsewhere. So we think that these campuses and this education is so amazing, and often international students will say that it's worth the sacrifice, the time, the effort to do this, that they got something that they could not get at home.
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. And in terms of the culture and the culture of collaboration at your schools, is there an opportunity for students from specific countries or ethnic backgrounds to meet one another? Or are there like different clubs with cultural roots? So in other words, is there a culture of collaboration and acceptance at your schools between different people of different cultures and backgrounds? And so Karen from Smith, do you have anything to answer for this one?
Sure, of course. There are a number of different ways that students connect on cultural, racial, and identity concerns and questions, but also that they feel a sense of being part of a very inclusive community in general. So we have a number of cultural organizations for students from different racial and ethnic backgrounds, as well as an international student group. And so students really feel that this is the sort of community where each individual is cherished and what she brings to the experience is really valuable. So we see students who really participate in a lot of different kinds of groups and cultural organizations, but certainly there are some students that feel like it's very important for them to really have a connection to their racial or ethnic background. So we have a number of student organizations, we call them unity organizations at Smith, where students can find those kind of support and resources. And we also really talk a lot about issues of inclusion and diversity and equity on our campus. So this is very much a place where each student, as I say, is valued, and each student's experience is validated. I think that that's really, these are communities. This is why I love small colleges and women's colleges. These are communities where each student feels a part of something larger, and her experience is really one of feeling included and feeling a part of things. And when we aren't perfect, because no institution is perfect, when something happens, we are a place that wants to discuss challenging issues and making sure that everyone feels comfortable, that everyone feels a part of a community. In the US, there's a lot of division right now along racial lines and identity lines. And so continuing these conversations on our campus and creating environments where people feel safe and heard is a critical part of what we do.
Yeah, excellent. And so we'll have Barnard answer this question, and then we'll do our last question.
Yeah, I think Karen said it perfectly. You know, in a country where we have such division, it's really affirming to be in a space where people may not always do it right all the time, but when we are having, but they want to do it right. So everyone's experience is heard and validated, and we are creating spaces where we can do things better. In terms of affinity groups and cultural organizations, we have tons. from Mujeres, which is our organization for our Latinx community, to BOSS, which is our organization for our Black students on campus, to the Muslim Students Organization. We have a ton of organizations that exist for students to kind of cultivate and create community on our campus. In addition, we have a council for diversity, equity, and inclusion. So that's really a spot where a lot of our administrators will discuss some of the issues that are on campus and ways in which we can make active steps to make the community better. And I think that's something that's truly important when you're navigating the college process, is finding communities that may not be perfect, but communities that want to make active steps to make a place more inclusion oriented.
Excellent. And so our last question before I end this off is, can you explain a bit about your school's postgraduate studies, the opportunities that they have, and if you could highlight some of the success stories, that'd be great. So let's pass this on to Karen.
Yes, and in fact, to the other Karen, if you could post a URL for me to the chat, smith.edu/success. So that's a website that's got a lot of the postgraduate outcomes, what our students do, whether it's medical school, law school, graduate school in an academic discipline, whether it's going on to jobs. I think what's really interesting about women's colleges is that we don't attract women that only study one thing. So I could give you examples of students who have gone for MBAs and have gone to law school and have gone to medical school. I can give you examples of students that have gone on to PhDs in chemistry, PhDs in literature, PhDs in mathematics. So because we have such breadth in terms of what we offer, our graduates are going on to do really a wide range of things. So that page gives you some of those statistics. But what I would say is that our students feel well prepared for graduate school, for jobs, and often attain leadership positions because that's part of what they do when they're here at Smith. And that I think our career office prepares students very well for those things. And again, I can't emphasize enough our network of Smith graduates around the world that are helping those who are just graduating, and this enormous network of successful, powerful, deeply engaged alums who are out there and who are great role models and mentors for our students.
Excellent. And what about in terms of the postgraduate opportunities and success stories at Barnard?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to pull up a document that I have here, just so I'm going to be switching back and forth. But I wanted to share that primary activity 1 year after graduation, about 68% of our students at 1 year out from graduating had full-time employment. 23% had graduate or professional studies, and then like that fewer than like 9% of students were either pursuing part-time employment, or still 1% were only seeking employment, and 2% were pursuing other activities. So I think because Barnard has such a robust internship program, many of our students are finding full-time employment through those channels. Many of our students are using our amazing career development centers. And by the way, at Barnard, career development is a resource there for all of our students and alums for life. So if you have a career change 5-10 years out from college, you're welcome to utilize its resources and meet with a career counselor. Our career counselors help with resume writing, mock interviews. If you need to borrow a suit for a job interview, they offer that as well. So those are some of the resources that are available. And I think because they're there, our students really do have a high rate of finding successful employment opportunities after graduation. But we also have, our students are also enrolling in some amazing graduate programs like NYU, Columbia University, Boston University, University of Michigan, Oxford. So those are some of our top graduate and professional schools that students have attended. Some of the organizations that our students are hired to include JP Morgan, Columbia University, Bloomingdale's, the Legal Aid Society, Morgan Stanley, the Rockefeller University, and Cornell Medical Center. So those are some of our top employers after students graduate. And on top of having the network of Barnard alums who are so enthusiastic and so excited about meeting recruiting current students who are interested in their industries. You also have the network of the Seven Sisters, which not just includes Barnard alumni, but include alumni from Smith, alumni from Bryn Mawr, alumni from Mount Holyoke, alumni from Wellesley, who are so excited to meet other Seven Sisters graduates who have had a similar transformative experience on their campuses, because we all went to these amazing women's colleges, and also do a host of networking for us as well. Joining that Seven Sisters network, you are a part of one of the most powerful networks of women in the world, and that includes how our students engage with their alumni.
Excellent. And so unfortunately our time is up here, but if you have any additional questions, what we're going to be doing is we're going to send all attendees the digital brochures for both Barnard and Smith. There will be contact information there, and then you can contact them specifically and then ask the questions that you need answered. Now, thank you kindly everyone for attending this seminar. We will have more in the future. If you have any additional questions, logistical ones, or anything that we can answer here at College Tracker, we will still be online for about 5–10 minutes after we end the seminar.
Suji, you wanted me to thank the speakers?
Sure, Janet, why don't you conclude the webinar, and then we'll conclude it.
I'm delighted. I don't know if the rest of you are like me, but I'm ready to enroll in either one. Yet both are so exciting. I'm only sorry that I can't enroll, and I hope that those of you who have attended today will seriously consider one or both, if not other women's colleges. Because there are two things that I really wanted to mention that both speakers touched upon. The main one is liberal arts. It is something in this day and age that people seem to regard not too highly. What is my daughter going to do with a degree in history? Families will ask me. And I will say, well, nothing specifically, but actually everything. So that liberal arts encompasses not just the arts, but also sciences too. And I think that's the beauty of it, because how many 17-year-olds know accurately what they're going to be doing with their futures? And having the opportunity to try a few things. And as Nikki said, what your major is not necessarily what you're going to become. So that the opportunity to try things and discover who you are and what you love. And it may not be right after graduation that students listening right now will enroll immediately in graduate school, but certainly all my students who are graduates of Barnard and Smith have gone to graduate schools once they figure out what it is that they really want to do as a career. And the other thing I wanted to mention, because you mentioned orientation, and I remember my Smith orientation meeting all these amazing women. Yes, professors, you know, we tend to be old folks, but when you're a freshman and you meet juniors and seniors who've already found what they loved and can express it to you, it really has such a strong mentorship influence on you. Here's somebody who's not that much different from me, and look at what she is doing now. Wow, maybe I could too. Even as you've mentioned, Smith mentioned, we want to know your progress up to this point, but we also want to know what it is that you're going to become in the future. And good writing skills, ability to think on your feet, expressing your opinion while appreciating other people's points of view and valuing it are so important. So which one of you would accept me next Monday? I'll get my suitcase packed right away and be on my way.
Of course, Janet, you are welcome anytime in Northampton.
Thank you.
All right, great. This was very informative. Pleasure meeting everyone here. Nikki and Karen, thanks so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be here, speaking to our girls and folks here in Canada. And we actually look forward to the next one. So thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you
guys for having us. Thank you. so much. Bye-bye.